My name is Amyah Weakley, and you're listening to Mason's Way, a podcast exploring the life and activism of AIDS prevention advocate Belinda Mason. Mason's advocacy did not only include her outspoken and written activism. She was active in the AIDS movement politically as well. Just as a reminder, Mason was appointed to the National Commission on AIDS in 1989, 2 years after her contraction and medical diagnosis. I wanted to dive into this activism a little bit deeper, however, going through film records and some unheard interview clips that detail Mason's involvement in policy. In this next clip, which is an unheard scene of an interview clip filmed for the Belinda movie, Mason talks about her involvement in various AIDS protection programs.
It wasn't like I got up one morning and said, okay, now I'm going to become active in AIDS and now this is what my life's going to be like. I'm going to go around and tell people about what having AIDS is like. It was kind of a gradual process. I got involved in the National Association and was elected to the board, which is a very easy thing to do because the board has a tremendously high turnover rate. So the first time you show up at a meeting, you can get elected to the board. So it was a very, it was easy thing to do. And because of my position there, I was offered a lot of speaking opportunities. There seemed to be a need in many parts of the country for people to hear from somebody who had HIV who was different than the traditional groups that had been associated with. There had been a lot of people who could only be spoken to by somebody who was, if not me, then like me, you know. And just one thing sort of led to another, and by the time the opportunity came for the presidential appointment, we found out the people who were advocating for me in my organization and other AIDS organizations in this town and across the country kind of learned that I would be, considered that I had a good shot at it, and so we really put a lot of political muscle to the extent that we had any behind hustling the appointment. We called everybody that we knew that had any remote connections to the administration, and we talked to a lot of people in the government agencies that are responsible for managing AIDS, and just hustled a lot of people and kind of schmoozed it up. So, I didn't really have I had no idea that it would be like this when I was beating the streets up here and going to Congress and trying to get support for the appointment. What basically I wanted was that some person with AIDS be on the commission. And if it had to be me, then that was all right. But I just wanted to make sure that some person with AIDS was there because I didn't feel like it could really be an effective commission unless there was a person with AIDS who was a kind of an integral part of the dialogue. But I never knew that it would be like it is. It's really strange. It's very strange to be famous for being sick, to the extent that you can say that you're, that anybody can ever say that they're famous or I don't know if it's famous, but it's like to be recognized by people that I don't know, happens to me quite a bit, and it's because I'm sick, and that's really strange. I mean, if I ever had, and I'm not sure that I really did because I never was that good at thinking that far ahead, but if I ever would have thought about being known for something, I would have really wanted it to be my work as a writer. That would have kind of been in the back of my mind as something that would have been comfortable and pleasant, to be known like that, not for being sick. So it's very strange.
As stated, Mason was appointed by President Bush to the National Commission on AIDS, which was an independent commission created by Congress in 1988. According to the National Library of Medicine website in July of 2022, the commission aims to create a broad public agreement on the magnitude, scope, and urgency of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, inspire leadership at all levels at both the public and private sector, and put in place effective, cooperative, and non-discriminatory systems and resources required for preventative education, comprehensive care, and the research effort necessary to halt the epidemic. During her time on the commission, a month or so before she passed in 1991, she wrote a letter to President Bush urging him to act toward the benefit of AIDS prevention in those living with HIV or AIDS. 2 years ago, you appointed me to the National Commission on AIDS because you agreed that it was important to have a person with AIDS on the panel. I have written you personally just once before about seeing the Names Project quilled. At this point in my life, there is little that you or anyone else can do for me, but I have no bitterness, and I'll spare you the terrible details of this late stage in my disease. If we are to limit the toll that AIDS will take on our society, we must all work side by side in the clear light of reason, rather than with fears and dark suspicions. Mr. President, doctors don't give people AIDS. They care for people with it. The blanket screening of healthcare workers will create the false illusion that people with AIDS are a threat to others. The use of HIV status as a criterion for immigration into this country feeds the same unjustified fear. In fact, people with AIDS in the U.S. and all over the world are often the leaders in education and prevention efforts related to HIV. Mr. President, there's no time for me to do much more about any of this. In these days, which may be my last, my family has become my respite from the storm. But there is time for you. Help Congress quickly clear up the testing and immigration issues so we can resume the attack on the virus itself. We need your leadership so we won't be distracted from the tougher jobs, such as how to care for the thousands more who are about to become ill, or how to finance that care, or stop the drug epidemic that is fueling a new wave of HIV infection, or educate our kids about how AIDS has changed some things forever. After more than 10 years of the AIDS crisis, it is disheartening to realize that some people are still pointing fingers and looking for a place to lay blame. Only our effort as a united people has any hope of slowing the epidemic and avoiding the further human tragedy that statistics tell us we will all surely face one day. Mr. President, those who come after me are counting on you. Your appointee, Belinda Mason. In addition to her work with the Commission, Mason served as the co-founder of the Kentuckiana People with AIDS Coalition, as noted in the 1991 New York Times article titled Belinda Mason, 33, U.S. Panelist and Bush Advisor on AIDS Policy. 6 weeks before she died, she was interviewed by the New York Times, as the article states, and quotes her ideas on the reformation of her own identity. She says in the article, "I have become the disease, and when people talk to me now, they see the disease first. Nobody talks to Belinda Mason, the short story writer, anymore. My previous identity has dissolved. I've become an AIDS poster child." In this unheard clip of an interview from the Belinda movie, directed by Ann Lewis and produced by Appalshop, Belinda speaks about the importance of her work, despite the strong shift in her audience's perceptions.
Exactly, but the fact remains that if I did not have AIDS, I wouldn't be doing this at all. I mean, I would be doing something else. I would be having whatever the life was that I had, which I was very comfortable with and content with, and I didn't have a lot of ambitions. I had a real good relationship with my husband and great kids, and I liked the work that I did. I had everything that I wanted, and so I would still be doing that. I mean, if I didn't have AIDS, and so it's really very strange to find that having AIDS can kind of turn you into some sort of, kind of a public figure. It's weird. Yeah, it's very weird. And I tell Steve a lot, and this is really the truth. It's like, it's a good thing I'm married because I would never get another date. I would never get a date. Would I ever get a date? No, I would never get a date. Not in Kentucky, not in Washington, you know, not in other parts of the country where I travel and, you know, I'm known, so it's a good thing that dating's really not that important to me anymore, because I would surely never get one.
How has it been? I mean, has it been okay? Is it? I know it's weird. Herb, I just let it ring and I think it'll stop.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, aside from being weird, is there anything that's worthwhile in all this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think the reason that I keep doing it, in spite of the fact that I know on some level that I'm not taking the best care of my health by traveling so much and by being under a lot of stress and having a lot of responsibility, is really not the best way to take care of yourself when you're sick. And I'm giving up a lot of time that's precious time that I won't have again with my family.
Belinda Mason's activism eventually became an overwhelmingly large part of her identity, but she was passionate about the work she was doing and the people she helped. Mason became familiar with the overlap of her identity and the disease, and who she became to the public based on her involvement in effective HIV care and prevention. However, this did not reflect in her activism, as she was extremely involved in these AIDS prevention organizations until she died in 1991. Mason's active role in bettering her community and the tolerance of others is admired by many and caused meaningful change within the AIDS epidemic. But what did the public, as well as film critics, think about the way Mason's life was shown in the Appalshop-produced film Belinda? I'll be covering some printed and filed documents in the next episode that give signs to the generally positive or negative audience reception of the film by reading reviews to support my ideas.